It's 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The alarm is blaring that terrible, static-filled buzzer sound that you absolutely hate, but you haven't bothered to change it for 3 years. You hit snooze, maybe twice, dragging yourself out of that warm, comfortable cocoon of sheets into the cold reality of a morning commute. You're standing in the kitchen, waiting for the coffee to brew, staring blankly at the wall, and that familiar thought loops through your brain for the 1,000th time. If I just had enough money, I would never have to do this again. We've all been there. That fantasy of the FU money. The day you walk into your boss's office, drop that resignation letter on the desk, and float out of the building like you're walking on clouds. You imagine the rest of your life consisting of endless travel, reading books on a Tuesday afternoon, and never, ever stressing about a deadline again. It is the ultimate dream. It is the financial promised land. But here is the thing about promised lands. They often look a lot different when you are actually standing in them. My name is Bob, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why the happily ever after of early retirement isn't always what it's cracked up to be. Because while everyone is talking about the 4% rule, the compound, interest charts, and exactly how many index funds you need to buy to escape the rat race, there is a whole other side of this coin that almost nobody is talking about. It's the quiet, creeping stuff that happens after the confetti settles. It's the psychological toll of stepping off the treadmill when everyone else you know is still running. And if you aren't prepared for it, achieving your goal might actually break your heart rather than fix it. And so let's take off the rose-colored glasses for a minute. Let's look at what happens when you actually stop working, and why the dark side of early retirement is so much more complicated than just math. The first thing that hits you, and it usually hits you like a ton of bricks, is the loss of identity. You know, we don't realize how much of our self-worth is tied up in what we do until we stop doing it. Think about it. When you meet someone at a party, what is the first question they ask? It's not, what are your values, or how do you like to spend your Sundays? No, it's, so what do you do? And for years, you've had an answer. I'm an accountant. I'm an engineer. I manage a team. It's a shield. It's a label. It tells people and you where you fit in the hierarchy of the world. When you retire early, especially in your 30s or 40s, that shield dissolves. Suddenly you're just Bob, or whatever your name is. I remember talking to a guy, let's call him Mark, who hit his number at 42. He was a software engineer. Brilliant guy. He had saved up $2.5 million, did all the right things, and pulled the trigger. He told me that for the first 3 months, it was paradise. He slept in, he took up golf, he renovated his kitchen. But by month 6, he fell into a deep depression. He told me, I feel like I've become invisible. When I go to dinner parties and say I'm retired, people look at me with a mix of jealousy and suspicion. But worse, I wake up in the morning and I don't know what my purpose is. That is terrifying. We build our lives around goals. Finish school, get the degree, get the promotion, hit the savings target. Those milestones are like breadcrumbs leading us through the forest. When you retire early at 40, you've just eaten all the breadcrumbs and you're standing in the middle of the forest with no path left. You have to build your own path now, and that is a lot harder than following the one society laid out for you. This leads me to the second point, which is honestly one of the most surprising and difficult parts of quitting the game early: the social isolation. It's weird to think about, but your job, even if you complain about it constantly, is a massive social anchor. It forces you to interact with people. It gives you a shared struggle. You and your co-workers bond over the terrible coffee, the annoying boss, the tight deadlines. It's a tribe. When you leave the tribe. Imagine this. It's 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. You've just finished a nice workout, you're grabbing a coffee, and the world is your oyster. You text your best friend. Hey, want to grab a drink? The reply comes back 5 minutes later. Dude, I'm in a meeting. Can we do Saturday? Saturday. That's 4 days away. This happens over and over. You find yourself with vast amounts of free time, but the people you love the most are trapped in the 9-to-5 grind. You start to feel guilty. You feel disconnected. You can't really vent to them about your stressful day of deciding which beach to go to, because they are worried about quarterly reports and mortgages. It creates this weird distance where you drift into a different world, a world of leisure and weekdays off, while your friends remain in the world of alarms and rush hour. I've seen people handle this in different ways. Some try to fill the void by hanging out exclusively with other retirees, but let's be honest, do you really want to spend your 40s hanging out with people who are worried about their hip replacements and their grandkids? Probably not. Others just end up feeling lonely, drifting around the house, waiting for their partner to come home so they have someone to talk to. It sounds like a luxury problem, and in a way it is, but loneliness is loneliness regardless of your bank balance. It eats at you. Okay, let's pivot from the psychological stuff to the cold, hard math, specifically the math that keeps you up at night. When you are accumulating wealth, the stock market going down is actually kind of exciting. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. If you are 30 years old and contributing $1,000 a month to your index fund, and the market crashes 30%, you are secretly thrilled. You're thinking, yes, everything is on sale. I'm buying more shares at a discount. You have time on your side. But the moment you retire early, that script flips. Overnight, a market crash goes from being a buying opportunity to being an existential threat. This is the sequence of returns risk. It's a fancy term, but the concept is simple. If the market crashes the year after you retire, and you are forced to sell your assets to pay for your life, groceries, electricity, travel, at depressed prices, you are permanently damaging your portfolio. You are selling low. You are eating the seed corn. Imagine you retire with $1.5 million. You feel safe. You feel invincible. Then, 6 months later, there's a recession. The market drops 40%. Now you have $900,000. You still need to spend $60,000 a year to live. That $60,000 comes out of that $900,000, leaving you with $840,000. Even if the market recovers eventually, you've locked in those losses. You have less capital to generate growth later. This creates a low-level, constant hum of anxiety. You watch the news differently. Every geopolitical event, every interest rate hike, every inflation report feels personal. It's not just a headline. Anymore, it's a direct attack on your survival. You might find yourself obsessively checking your brokerage app, refreshing the page, calculating how many years you can survive if the market stays flat for a decade. It turns the dream of freedom into a prison of worry. You traded the stress of a boss for the stress of the S&P 500. And honestly, the S&P 500 is a much meaner boss. Here is something that sounds a little philosophical, but bear with me. Humans need struggle. We are biologically wired to overcome obstacles. Our brains reward us with dopamine when we solve a problem, when we achieve something difficult, when we push through resistance. It's why we feel good after a hard workout or finishing a complex project. When you retire early, you essentially remove all mandatory struggle. You don't have to do anything. You can hire someone to mow the lawn. You can order groceries to your door. You can pay for a cleaner. You optimize your life for maximum comfort. And comfort is amazing, don't get me wrong, but too much comfort leads to atrophy. Not just physical atrophy, but mental and emotional atrophy. I've noticed this pattern with people who achieve financial freedom very quickly. They get bored. Not the, I don't know what movie to watch kind of bored. It's a deep, existential boredom, a lack of friction. Without friction, you lose your grip. You start to create drama where there doesn't need to be any. You might find yourself getting irrationally angry at a waiter, or obsessing over a slightly crooked picture frame, or picking fights with your spouse just to feel something. It's the dark side of having everything you want. When you have everything to lose, the fear of losing it can be paralyzing, and when you have nothing to strive for, the joy of living can start to fade. So, what do you do about this? How do you retire early without losing your mind? The solution, I think, isn't to stop working. It's to change why you work. The most successful early retirees I know aren't the ones sitting on a beach doing nothing. They are the ones who treated their retirement as a FU to mandatory labor, not a FU to productivity itself. They find projects that have zero financial pressure attached to them. They volunteer, they build furniture, they write books, they mentor younger people in their field, they inject artificial struggle back into their lives, they run marathons, they learn difficult languages, they do things that are hard, not because they get paid for it, but because it makes them feel alive. You also need to build your community before you quit. Don't wait until you leave your job to find friends. Start building relationships now with people who share your interests. Not just your commute. Join a club, a group, a class. Build a tribe that exists outside of the